this natural mind? Because we are always, through reliance on our six senses as being the only means of understanding, we are always related to the gross images. And these subtle images, they are connected in this tradition with the samadhi, non-dualistic samadhi. And the gate to the non-dualistic samadhi, as this treatise explains, is the non-thinking, the experience of non-thinking. Through the experience of what to do.
It's okay,
Recording.
Fasa. I already upload into the YouTube, Fasa. So please continue, Fasa.
Okay. So the non-dualistic understanding of meditation in Chinese tradition, in the Tibetan tradition, is based on understanding of the true reality to be one. The different realities described in Buddhism, conventional reality, the highest reality, the Four Noble Truths, and so on, and many, many realities of the different rupas and namas, they are only skillful means guiding us to understand one reality. Understanding this one reality is called pragya, poje. And this poje, translated great wisdom, this great wisdom is the skillful means for non-dualistic realization and for the process of non-dualistic realization, which, as we have learned in the beginning, brings us to the original enlightenment. Original enlightenment is, in this tradition, equal to understanding the process of getting enlightened. Unless you have the idea that there is something pure in you, so to say, transcending the bondages of the mind with which we are confronted in daily life, then you cannot enter into this process. That's why this treatise, as we have explained, is named very suitably the awakening of faith in Mahayana. Awakening of faith in Mahayana is awakening to this skillful means of non-dualistic wisdom, which is great wisdom, which transcending all the limitations of the mind and bestowing a freedom on the mind, freedom on the process of thinking. And this freedom you can is connected with this idea which you find in the Wisdom Sutras of the natural nirvana. The Theravada never speaks of the natural nirvana. This natural nirvana is connected to the idea of the original enlightenment, which is equal to the process of getting enlightened. Shi Jie, Shi means beginning, and beginning actually is returning to the natural state, which we have lost by identifying with memory and thinking. Thinking and memory, not by chance, is the same word. This is also what the Socrates, Platon, and so on have pointed out. When we think, we actually remember the images, and the images, they have to do with what the modern psychology calls these archetypes, that are, so to say, the forms of images which we share. So with this, we can start. As usual, the author of the treatise asks why the bodhisattva act according to suchness, which is omnipresent, which has no restrictions, which is not limited. And in this way, their functions can be achieved. This is where we ended. So that means we have explained, if I remember, the great function belongs to Dharma Kaya. Dharma Kaya is a synonym of suchness. Yet, in our case, it is this Dharmakaya is hidden behind the veil of avidya, of non-science, of non-understanding, of ignorance, literally of non-science. The true Buddhism is the science. So, because it is only the wisdom which illumines the true nature of the mind, which is nirvana, which is natural to the mind, it equals to suchness. And the suchness penetrates all. And this is what the bodhisattva is supposed to meditate on in order to get a true realization of the bodhicitta, of the enlightened mind. Bodhicitta means enlightened mind. An enlightened mind is what makes Mahayana. Without enlightened mind, no question of any Mahayana. And it is called Mahayana because we have learned this enlightened mind, this hidden by our ignorance, is the Dharma. And it is in us beings. It is the Tathagata Garbha. It is the matrix of Tathagata. But in the Buddhas, this Tathagata, which is separated from ignorance, it is just suchness. The true mind is suchness. So now the author asks why. Because the Buddhas Tathagatas are only the Dharmakayas that we have explained. The true Buddha is this non-dualistic suchness, which is Dharmakaya, which is emptiness in the sense of non-dualistic meaning. The emptiness, as in a sense of non-dualistic meaning, is everything. As we know in the Theravada, emptiness is always emptiness of something. But here, in the non-dualistic sense, emptiness is suchness because it is not opposed to anything. Suchness is not opposed to anything. That's why tatha, tathata, the state of things as they really are. State of things as they really are not opposed to anything. Because a mind has no shape, mind has no form, the true mind is not opposed to anything. what it makes opposed to something is by the differentiating mind, which is based on identification with thinking. So the this Dharmakaya, the true body of the Dharma, has the form or is marked or is characterized by wisdom, by knowledge. So this knowledge of Dharmakaya is the power of the true reality. And through this power of the true reality, the Bodhisattva can transform reality. This is a very wonderful thing. The essence of Mahayana is to transform the reality from this defiled reality in which we live by identifying with thinking to the pure reality. The pure reality is a pure land. And this pure land, of course, is the true nature of the mind, which is nirvana. And this true nature of the mind is self-illuminating. So the author says the paramartha, the first truth or the highest truth, does not have any mundane objects. There are no mundane objects in the highest truth. Some authors, they translate it as the absolute. I don't like this too much, this absolute. It is based on the Hegel's understanding of philosophy, which is very illuminating, but also has its shortages, which wise people have pointed out. So this first truth does not have any mundane, any worldly objects. That's why it is highest truth. There is a very popular sutra in the Tibet, not so much in China, called Vikrama Vikranti Pragya Paramita Sutra, which says if the wisdom, true wisdom, had any object, it would be ignorance. This is precisely what the author is trying to lead us to. Because in this tradition, the only reality is the mind. And the mind has no object, no true object, but it is the base for all objects. Yet it itself has no object. That's why he can accept all objects, just like mirror, just like empty space. These are the two main objects of meditation in this tradition of Yogacara, or of the everything being the manifestation of the mind. So, as the Daimon Sutra says and explains very well, and as such, the highest reality without any object is free from anything. It is of from the think of giving, from any aim in giving, yet it benefits all in accordance with what we ignorant being who still rely on our thinking as being the only reality. So this leads us beyond. So this reality in Chinese poetry, Chinese philosophy, compared to the full moon. So this full moon is reflected in all ponds, and this ponds of beings is compared to our heart, the true heart. But we do not see in this reflection, we do not see that this reflection does not have any owner. It is just a reflection of the full moon. It is not the full moon. So this Dharmakaya, which is a true nature of the mind, in other words, can benefit all beings without having any concrete function, because as explained, the true Dharmakaya is the Buddha. And this uh, Dharmakaya illuminates something, and the Buddha, who is the true Buddha, is Dharmakaya, one who sees Buddha. Sees Dharma, one who sees Dharma. So we all benefited by this Dharmakaya, which is in our hearts, which is called uh, the matrix of Tathagata, or the Buddhahood. Yet we are, so to say, alienated from it by identifying with our process of thinking, which is only a process, as Buddhism explained, due to causes and conditions. But without this process, we also do not understand anything, because we understand through thinking. But the right thinking is this pure connects us to the pure wisdom, which is, so to say, free from defilement, free from arising and passing. It has no arising and no passing. So we do not see this which in our mind, which is the true nature of the mind, which does not arise and pass. Yet we can have approach to it only through what we see, what we hear, what we contemplate, what we think about. So we are, in a way, in the state of a paradox. And this is precisely what is to be realized. In the process of thinking, when we apply the wisdom, non-dualistic wisdom, there is a paradox. We identify with something which has no form, and the thinking, the mind by itself has no form. That is why it can think about anything. It can produce incredible constructive original ways of seeing world. It can transform the world. Yet, in its essence, it does not belong to anyone. It only belongs to causes and conditions. And the causes and conditions is precisely what explains in Buddhism the process of bondage and also the process of liberation. It has two sides. Because of ignorance, we are attached to perceptions and sensations, and because we are attached to perceptions and sensations, then we have grasping, and because we have grasping, we suffer. It's all right to have grasping, but grasping with understanding is liberating, as we have learned before. But grasping without understanding is precisely the bondage. So this is why this is a non-dualistic interpretation of dependent origination. The wisdom exists only related to non-wisdom. The good exists only in relation to the bad. The big exists only in relation to the small. And actually, these relations, they are the subject matter of thinking. And when we identify with thinking as belonging to someone, we identify with the mind as belonging to someone. And that mind which belongs to someone actually does not belong to anyone. Whatever is defined by causes and conditions cannot belong to anyone. So we come to these functions, and they are very important. The functions of the true essence and true characteristics of the essence, they are of two kinds. So according to these two kinds, also the sutras of great wisdom, Pragya Paramita Sutra, they speak of two kinds of bodhisattvas, which is explained exactly here. They are bodhisattvas which are connected with the essence, yoti, and these are the bodhisattvas with realization, and they are bodhisattvas which are, so to say, connected with the function of the essence, and they still connected with the essence, but they don't understand the uh, the real essence, which is non-dualistic. So the functions are of two kinds. One is based on the consciousness differentiating basis, which is consciousness differentiating basis. It is a six consciousnesses, five senses consciousnesses, and mental consciousness. They different the basis. Without the base, no consciousness can work. And the basis is I and the forms and so on. Inner basis and outer basis. So the consciousnesses which differentiate the inner base, I, and the outer base, which are the forms. So they perceive what we usually perceive the commoners and the followers of the two lower vehicles, hmm, see, they see by differentiation. hmm, They see by differentiation and they rely on the differentiating mind. So this reliance of the on the differentiating mind is reliance, before we have explained, is a reliance of the gross forms of thinking. Hmm? First comes, in this tradition we have learned, first come the three subtle forms of thinking, the karmic consciousness, the evolving consciousness, and the revealing consciousness, then the differentiating consciousness, then the continuity of consciousness. These are, we have learned, defined as manas. Very different from traditional yogacara. Traditional yogacara, the object of manas is normally explained as being the alaya, which the manas appropriates as something belonging to the self or of the self. In the tradition of Xuanzang, it is the evolving aspect, the Tianfen, the Darshana Bhaga of the alaya, which is the object of the manas. So, due to manas, we identify with the thinking. In this tradition, of course, manas is continuity. And we identify with this continuity. So we identify with the thought. When we penetrate that it is the continuity, so we identify not because we see that this karmic consciousness comes from the mind itself, and from it thinking evolves. So we can understand that actually everything that appears through thinking. Without the thinking, nothing really appears. So this is a non-dualistic approach. There is only one reality, and here, this one reality, it is the mind. Because we don't see the one reality, we identify with object as being something outside of the mind, and with the subject being something outside of the objects. So what we perceive are only the gross images. We don't understand the subtle images, which can, if we use the uh, wisdom of Mahayana, which can transform our consciousness. So this mind of commoners, which we are, commoners who have not realized the bodhisattva realization, which is non-dualistic, is not, we have, I think, learned before, is Wei Xiang Yin, is not yet connected with the true reality, which is inseparable, which is one. So we still think that the objects are outside the mind and the mind is outside the objects. And when first there is an object, then will come the mind, as explained in Theravada. So what we actually see is created body, or yin shen, very wonderful expression in Chinese, or respondent body, because everybody responds in a different way to the objects of the six senses. We all respond in a different way according to our thinking, according to our memory. Hmm? And this respondent body, yin shen, is created body. Hmm? Is created body because we take it as something created outside of the mind. So we see the Buddha body as something coming from outside of us. And so we don't understand that the true Buddha is actually the true nature of the mind. When we understand it, then we can also understand that the reality is only one. So, because they rely completely uh, on differentiation, even if it is a correct differentiation, we have given rise to bodhicitta, but we have realized the bodhicitta only in a way by correct differentiation. We believe by faith, not by realization, that there is a reality transcending differences, and that this reality is the light of wisdom which illumines everything. We came to it when we are practicing the bodhisattva path, also by correct differentiation, correct view. Hmm? Correct view is in the Eightfold Noble Path is a beginning of the path. We can only realize nirvana when we have the correct view. But here, the correct view idea is different. Correct view in Theravada is based on correct differentiation. 5 aggregates, 6 inner bases, outer bases, 6 elements, eye, form, and visual consciousness, dependent origination. This is a correct view. So everything is dependent origination in the past, in the present, in the future. But here, when we have a true realization, so this dependent origination is arising from the true nature of the mind, which is not dependent. So when there is dependence, there has to be something also which is not dependent. And that which is not dependent, that is a true mind in this tradition. So as soon as we engage in thinking and we believe that our thinking is objective, then our vision is limited. So we see only limited forms. And we consider these limited forms, one opposed to another, as being something true. And it is because we don't actually see that all these forms are forms evolving from the consciousness itself. They are our memories. They are our archetypes. They are our images. So if we see the cause of the process of thinking as something outside, then the fruit of our thinking will be always limited, restricted to rather gross images, which don't have the power of transforming our mind to, by the means of the true wisdom, of Poje, of non-dualistic wisdom into the transforming power of oneness. So we are ignorant of the fact, in this tradition it is a fact, that all objects, no exception, are the objects of consciousness. And outside of consciousness, when we consider something real, we are linked to a limited vision. And this limited vision is seeing the Buddha as something outside of us, something limited, an Indian aristocrat born in that and that time, who did this and that, who married, and having seen the suffering of this world, he renunciated and realized the enlightenment as a person. This is, in this tradition, a rather limited understanding. It is not based on the revealing consciousness. Revealing consciousness is a key to subtle vision. Revealing consciousness leads us to understanding that what we actually see is rooted in our karma, rooted in our memory. Karma means the accumulation of will formations, which then form the images in our mind to which we respond as something objective. But they are not objective because we see everybody in a different way. Even as human beings, we see in a different way, not to speak about other categories of being, animals, gods, and so on. Everybody sees the same object in a different way, with different reactions. How? Because we have learned before, because what we actually are is this alaya consciousness, which combines the non-created consciousness with the created consciousness. And created consciousness is what arises and ceases in each and every moment of thinking. So when we understand that our memories, our images, our thoughts come from this avarjana vijnana, from this revolving consciousness, then we can understand that what we think is just wang xiang, is just illusionary thinking. And illusionary thinking is our dream. Everybody has a different dream because everybody has a different alaya. And according to this alaya, we see the objects in response to the images in our mind. But when we understand that this identifying these images with something real that exists outside the mind, that means that we are, so to say, in this tradition, we are returning to the real. And the key for returning to the real is this understanding in this tradition of the natural Buddhahood in all beings, being the nature of the mind, which is called the Tathagata Garbha, the matrix or the womb of the Tathagatas. Without this womb, there is no enlightenment in this tradition. So even in Theravada, the Buddha is, according to Vinaya, is said when what he realized under the Bodhi tree, as he saw us beings as the lotus flowers, symbol of purity, merge in the mud of existence. So, according to the Pragya Paramita Sutras, there are two kinds of bodhisattvas. It comes also here. This treatise is completely based on the Pragya Paramita Sutras, on the Sutras of Great Wisdom. We have the Siddha Buddhas, Siddha Bodhisattvas, understanding that all dharmas appearing in the mind are just names, not more than that, with which we identify. And we have the bodhisattvas, which are not yet siddhas. We have not understood that there is only one reality, that names, symbols, sentences, syllables, signs is, when we hold to them as something real appearing outside of the mind, then we don't understand. And because we don't understand the nature of our experience being all in mind, then we are not siddhas. We have not yet realized that the phenomena of the world are just names. So we have not realized that actually the form, true form, is Vairochana, is non-limited. It is the Sambhogakaya. And we will come here to this very important concept of Sambhogakaya. When we want non-dualistic realization, we have to understand the Buddha in three functions: the function of the Nirmanakaya, the created body, the Buddha as a Sambhogakaya. Nirmanakaya is body created for others. Sambhogakaya is a body created by oneself through samadhi and through direct wisdom of the non-dualistic nature of the world. And the true body, which has no form, but to which we have access through the Sambhogakaya, the body created in samadhi. That is the Dharmakaya, which has no form, no object, no symbol. And that is a true Buddha. And when we realize this true Buddha, then we realize that the five aggregates and so on, they are just emptiness, because the mind has no form. The mind is a Vairochana. The mind has no form, and the rupa, the forms, also have no limitation. And these forms that they have no limitations, that is a Lushana form. That is a Vairochana Buddha. The Vairochana Buddha is the limitless forms contemplated in samadhi. That is the enjoyment for oneself. So second kind, we have two kinds of functions of the essence and its characteristics. The first we have explained is limited, and the second one is based on the karma vijnana. The karma vijnana is the karmic consciousness which moves the mind. When we understand that the mind is moved by mind itself, not by the reality of the objects outside the mind, then we can realize the bodhicitta. We can realize we have direct access to the realization of the bodhicitta. And then we can actually eliminate at least part of our ignorance which hides the one reality inseparable from the whole, from us. So this is a state of the realized bodhisattva. He has realized the true reality. So he has realized part, himself being the part of the whole, inseparated from the whole, and he can, he has transformed his mind into deeper wisdom based on subtle images which come from the mind, because true realization is connected with the understanding that the objects and the mind, they never been separated, never are separated, and never will be separated. So this is the understanding that one is a whole, and whole is a one, and two belongs to one, three belongs to one, everything belongs finally to one. And this one, we have learned in the beginning, it is a one mind, and it is the true nature of the mind. And the true nature of the mind has, as we have learned, this great essence, great characteristics or qualities which are not empty, even so the mind is empty, and which have the great functions, which now, when we have understood the true pure mind, which is understand that all objects come from the mind, that we can understand only in samadhi. So we also understand this revolving mind is appears together with the Kyati Vijnana, with the manifesting mind. So we have access to the enjoyment body. Enjoyment body is the subtle understanding that the movement, all movements come from the mind itself. There is no other movement than coming from the mind itself. And that movement coming from the mind itself is the our karmic consciousness, karmic consciousness of the beings. So the true realized bodhisattva in this tradition, he contemplates the chitta matrata, that the mind is the only reality, first he realizes by this contemplation the faith. Realization of the faith is a first step from being the outer, this why fanfu, into the nei fanfu. Even so, we have not yet realized the non-dualistic reality. We have realized the faith in it. And for that, we need all the qualities described as the uh, base for causes of enlightenment. We need the right effort. We need the faith, of course. We need samadhi, and we need wisdom. Then, when we have these on the base of the correct mindfulness, here mindfulness does not mean the mindfulness of body, uh, sensations, mind, and mental objects as being something separate, but as being just one reality. This is a mindfulness in this tradition. So we separate in order to understand them as being one reality, inseparable reality. Then we can realize the bodhicitta, which is a realization of, then we can dwell in bodhicitta, which is a realization of the faith in true mind. The true mind, when we dwell in the true mind, then we do not identify with thinking, we identify with the principle of thinking, which comes from the non-thinking. And then we can practice the perfections on the base of great wisdom, non-dualistic wisdom. And we can transfer merit not for our realization, but for the realization of all beings without making any differentiation. And so we prepare ourselves for the immediate entrance into the pure mind, which is always non-dualistic and all-penetrating. So only by this kind of samadhi on subtle forms, we develop the ability to see subtle forms of Buddha appearing in the mind as the enjoyment body, no outer object. And this is the function of what was described before as the original enlightenment, Penjue. Due to Penjue, we understand that the true forms appearing in the mind are inseparable from the mind. So these forms appearing in the mind, the rupa nimittas, are the true, inseparable from the true characteristics of the mind. So the Sambhogakaya, the body of enjoyment, this body, the text says, has immeasurable forms, rupas, and these Rupa, they are the symbol of the pure reality. They are these 32 primary marks of the Buddha, which symbolize the perfection in the yoga. And these 32 primary characteristics have the 80 secondary characteristic. All these appear on the base of the pure mind. So in the pure mind, which is the practice of subtle images, these 32 characteristics, according to the commentaries of the Theravada, the not only the Buddha has, Ananda has them also, the Sariputta has some of them. They are the result of the virtue. So we have, according to Buddhism, we have the virtue body, which is a result of our practice of virtue in the past, and we have the karmic body. When we become the Buddhas, we have only the virtue body. We are not anymore linked to the karmic body. But in the case of the disciples, even so they may have some of these marks of perfection, they are not yet related to the supreme virtue body, which is existing parallel to the Dharmakaya. The Dharmakaya then creates the subtle forms. And it creates the subtle forms due to the parami practice, due to the practice of the perfections. And that's why this body created by the practice of the perfections in this tradition is undistractable. And the bodhisattvas, they learn to dwell in this undistractable body, created by samadhi, created by the practice of virtue and wisdom. And this body is decorated, this resultant body in which the realized bodhisattvas dwell, is decorated by all kinds of immeasurable alamkaras, immeasurable decorations. So these immeasurable decorations and these perfections of the body, they are manifested by this revolving consciousness. Revolving consciousness understands that the whatever movement in the mind appears comes from the karmic consciousness, and karmic consciousness can, through this revolving consciousness, can transform what is revealed to us. So eventually, this is a practice of the Pure Land of the heart. So this is how the suchness, so to say, perfumes, permeates the karma. We have had before how the ignorance permeates the wisdom, and how wisdom permeates the ignorance. And in our alaya, which is a combination of the mind created by karma and the non-created mind. Hmm? These two, they always influence each other, permeate each other. And this is our existence. Wisdom permeates ignorance, ignorance permeates wisdom. And when we uh, perfume the karmic consciousness by wisdom, then it will transform our consciousness into our alaya consciousness into the great mirror, the consciousness of the great mirror, which reflects everything but does not attach to anything. And the condition for that is that we understand that no object comes from outside. All objects are happening just in one mind. So this one mind, understanding this one mind, is the original enlightenment. And this, due to this original enlightenment, understanding of the original enlightenment, we can transform our reality. First, by gross images due to our thinking, and then by subtle images, understanding that all images, all objects, there is no object without an image, are actually the product of our mind. Which mind? Revolving mind. This revolving mind cannot exist without the uh, revealing mind. So as soon as there is mind, we have the aspect of the seer and the aspect of the seen. And when one has insight, one does not separate them, one sees them always as being one reality based on the karmic consciousness. Karmic consciousness is our alaya. It is a consciousness which moves the mind. And the true enlightenment is to transform this consciousness into the wisdom of the great mirror. Then the manas, the individualizing consciousness, the consciousness of continuity, in this treatise becomes the consciousness of the innate sameness of all the phenomena. So on the principle of the pure consciousness, of the suchness consciousness, the individualizing consciousness reveals the wisdom of sameness in everything. Then the mental consciousness will be wonderful seeing, and the five consciousness will be accomplishing whatever one wants to accomplish on the base of wisdom. So this Sambhoga Kaya, this body of enjoyment, which is a result of understanding the subtle aspects of objects, all coming from the mind, which can transform this understanding, can transform our world, our vision of the world. So this Sambhoga Kaya is, the text says, is immeasurable in forms. Wherever it is manifested, it has no limits, In it, small, big, true, false, they all just related, and whatever is related should not be object of grasping. And what is no object of grasping has no limit, because the mind, true nature of the mind, has no limit. And the true nature of the mind cannot be exhausted. It is free from characteristics. That means it is free from different holding to differentiating thoughts. Without differentiating, we cannot live. But there is no need to grasp these differentiations, because these differentiations, they evolve from consciousness, and they are then expression of the continuity of consciousness, which is manas, which is individualizing. The continuity of consciousness is different for all beings. In terms of, so it cannot be exhausted, it is free from characteristic in terms of limitations. We all, our characteristics of the mind, the characteristics of the continuity of the mind, are based on the limitations of the objects. Because we hold to differentiations. But if we don't hold to the differentiation, the objects appear spontaneously. And what appears spontaneously upholds itself constantly without being subjected to distractions or loss. So this is the secret of transformation of the mind, which is only possible by understanding in this tradition the mind as being one reality. So this mind being one reality, understand also forms as being one reality. This one reality of the forms is the, especially in Avatamsaka Sutra, is the Vairochana Buddha. What the Sudana sees in Avatamsaka Sutra is actually this transformation of the world, of the spheres of perception, by understanding that the forms are the product of Dharma Dhatu, of the sphere of the Dharma, which is selfless, which is spontaneous, and which is limitless, and which is just one true reality. One true reality is based on one true form, which is the form based on this accomplishment in the transformation of karma vijnana by wisdom. So the text explains all these virtues of Sambhogakaya, of the enjoyment body, which is the result body. Sambhoga means a result body. Result of what? Result of the fruit of the true cause, and the true cause is the Dharmakaya, which in us, ordinary beings, is hidden and exists in our mind as the matrix of the Tathagata, or as the natural Buddhahood. So this Sambhogakaya, the body of enjoyment, is a result of the vasanas, of the permeations through the non-defiled mind. That true mind, which is suchness, which is emptiness, which is the true nature of the thing, cannot be defiled. And we approach this mind by the practice of different perfections based on the perfection of wisdom. Without the perfection of wisdom, in this tradition, in Mahayana, we have virtues, but we don't have virtues leading to non-dualistic realization. For non-dualistic realization, we need virtues based on the bodhicitta, the idea of the true nature of the mind, which is non-dualistic. So when through the Sambhogakaya we attune then to inconceivable permeation, this inconceivable permeation is by the nature of reality as it really is, Dharmakaya, the Dharma body. The Dharma body is inconceivable, but we can conceive it by understanding the true nature of the mind, which is, we can only understand it by skillful means of the wisdom, great wisdom, non-dualistic wisdom, which is, so to say, revealed by the practice of the great love and compassion. So it is called this body of transformation, the body of enjoyment is called the is characterized by perfect enjoyment, sukha. It is a sukha, the uh, resultant body of practicing the virtues based on the skillful means of great wisdom. They lead to this resultant body. The resultant body is the body of perfect enjoyment. So it is called the body of enjoyment, Sambhoga Kaya. Sambhoga means enjoyment. And it is based on the Sanskrit root bhuj, which means actually to bend. So we bend together to the uh, true nature of the reality, which is suchness. We can explain linguistically in this way. When we bend to the true nature of reality, which is one and which is suchness, then we are linked to the unthinkable permeation of the mind, which leads us to the penetration of the causal body or resultant body, enjoyment body, which is inseparable from the realization of the Dharmakaya, which is a body of no form, of so this body of the no form is the parityaga, which means mukti, which means realization of that which is unthinkable, which is beyond thinking, yet it penetrates everywhere. Hmm? So that is why in this tradition, the non-thinking, the experience of non-thinking is the uh, way to realize the true nature of the thinking. The true nature of the thinking means a realization where the actually the thinking comes from some things that cannot be grasped. And that which cannot be grasped is called suchness. And it is called the true nature of the things. So the text continues. What we common people see is only gross forms, stula lakshana of Buddha's body. And these gross forms differ in accordance with the our samsaric mind, which creates the six spheres of samsaric existence. And even within the six spheres of samsaric existence, we still think in terms of different perception. So that's why even being human, belonging to the same sphere of existence, we still think in a very different way. Because we are only connected to the gross forms. And we do not see that the gross forms, they are result of manas, which is explained in our treatise as a continuity of the mind. Continuity of what mind? Of the karmic mind. So we are alienated from this reality in us, which is luminous, which is penetrates everywhere, which is nature of wisdom, which penetrates all spheres of existence. We are alienated it, so we don't experience the forms as enjoyment forms, as sukha nimitta. When we become realized bodhisattvas who only see one reality as a truth, we see all nimittas as a sukha nimittas, all forms as related to the enjoyment body, because we attain the ability to transform our reality by wisdom. And this, what the ordinary being see, usually is called the response body, yin shen, which just respond to something coming from the outside, not to the something coming out of the mind, which has samadhi and wisdom and is able to transform the reality. So this responding body has many uh, forms, called created body or called responding body, which are innumerable. When we understand this, we understand that the true Buddha has no form, and that this true Buddha is actually the true nature of the mind. There is a wonderful story in the Avadanas. Today we are finishing. We have already reached the end of our time. In the Avadana, there is a story of the Upagupta, who was great realized Arahat living at about the same time as the uh, author of our treatise, Ashwagosha, in the Mathura time, or in the Sakya time, Sakya dynasty time, when the Scythians were ruling the North India. At the time, the Buddhism was especially active and produced many, many great uh, uh, siddhas, real, Upagupta being one of the most famous of them. He had such powers that he was even said to be able to stop the movement of the sun. And this Upagupta, when he is dying, he has such a devotion to the Buddha that the Mara, the evil one, the Lucifer, wonderful world, Lucifer, the Mara, as our treatise is describing, the Mara is the one actually who uh, is inseparable from wisdom. Hmm? Lucifer is one who makes light. Hmm? And this treatise exactly says that without understanding ignorance, we cannot understand wisdom. Precisely this teaching. So the penetration of ignorance, the symbol of which is Mara, is actually the maker of the wisdom, Lucifer. Hmm? Wonderful description of this in one of the greatest works of the world literature, the Faust. So this Mara, he becomes a disciple of Upagupta, and he follows him everywhere because he has such a devotion, and through devotion the evil becomes good. We have to remember we are at this time of Ashwagosha, Upagupta. We are at the time when India was all traditions were shaken by the bhakti movement, by the movement of devotion, which then become all dominating. Instead of the rational period of the Abhidharma, which I have especially studied, we come to the devotional period, which then issued into tantric tradition. And the Upagupta became the disciple of Upagupta. The Mara became the disciple of Upagupta. And when the Upagupta was dying, then he came to him and said, "Dear friend, is there anything I can do for you?" And the Mara, the Lucifer, he is actually all powerful. The ignorance is all powerful when we penetrate it. Because we don't penetrate it, we don't see it as all powerful. And ignorance only exists in relation to the non ignorance. Otherwise, ignorance has no meaning. Now, this Upagupta tells his old friend, ignorance in form of Mara, Listen, I have only one regret when I am going away from this world, and that is I was born too late to meet my teacher, to meet his direct disciples. Hmm? But I would like to see, before I die, to see them. Mara says, well, my friend, this is a small thing. So he transformed himself into Buddha. And it is said that was a period when of, when the Greek influence was very uh, powerful, even in India. And what happened? This he appeared to the Buddha, and this Buddha is said to be like similar to the Apollon, the great Greek god of beauty and rationalism and of harmony. And so he then taught maybe his disciples to picture Buddha in this way. From this period, from Upagupta, starts the form of the Buddha as we know it today. Before that, the Buddha was only pictured uh, in form of a tree or in form of the Buddha footsteps with Dharma chakra and so on. There was never any picture of Buddha. It starts according to this story with the Upagupta and all powerful Lucifer or Mara. So that much for today and see you next week. Okay, let us transfer merit for the benefit of all sentient beings. 愿以此功德，普济一切我等一众生皆空成佛道。阿弥陀佛。